All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. The Detroit Lions just enjoyed their best regular season in franchise history, but right now, there's no happiness in the greater Detroit era as their favorite football team, which began this postseason with such high hopes, is now cleaning out their lockers. Things fell apart for the Lions on Saturday night, excuse me, as they fell to the Washington Commanders 45 to 31 in the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. Detroit was able to put up 521 yards of total offense versus the Commanders, but as their offseason has prematurely begun, they're going to be haunted by the five turnovers on offense, which include three interceptions and a fumble by starting quarterback Jared Goff. Now, this injury plagued Lions defense never had an answer for Commanders rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels, who accounted for 350 yards of total offense, while as a team, the Commanders had 182 yards on the ground. And now the questions have begun for the Lions as the offseason, like I said, has prematurely begun. Will Detroit lose both of their coordinators? And of course, that has already started with Ben Johnson set to become the head coach of the Chicago Bears. And then, of course, defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn is also a head coaching candidate during this current cycle. One thing's for sure, going into next season, the Lions definitely want to be healthy. Gosh, so many doggone injuries for this team on both sides of the ball. And of course, the biggest absence that the Lions had was Aiden Hutchinson because his presence really changed things with what the Lions were able to do defensively because you're talking about one of the best edge rushers in the NFL currently, and he has a high motor and he knows how to get after things. So clearly, you want to have him back healthy. Unfortunately for Detroit, this is the second straight year of January heartbreak. And I feel from an outsider's perspective that last year's NFC championship game loss still has a sting for the Lions because they had the game. They were right there. And, it just slipped from their grasp. And it's not one of those things where, especially in sports, especially in the NFL, you can't just simply say, you know what, wait to next year. You got back to the postseason this year, but still, there were hurdles for the Lions to be able to overcome, and they weren't able to overcome them. And like I said, in the world of the National Football League, you can simply not just say, wait to next year. You think back to 1984, Dan Marino's second year rather, in the National Football League. He helped the Miami Dolphins get to the Super Bowl. Of course, they lost to the 49ers, and a lot of people said, well, this is going to be an annual appearance for Dan. He's going to have multiple opportunities to get championships, plural. And unfortunately for Dan Marino, he never got back to the big game. And overall, this was a tough postseason appearance for the NFC North as a whole. I mean, we saw this league dominate throughout the regular season. The Lions went 15 and 2. The Vikings went 14 and 3. The Packers, I think they were either 11 and 6 or 12 and 5, but nonetheless, yes, 11 and 6, but nonetheless, all three of those teams were one and done. Okay. So it's not about what you do during the regular season. It all comes down to January. What are you going to be able to do? And like I always say, survive and advance. But you look at this game where the Lions lost um, to the Commanders. The turnovers really hurt them. You think back early second quarter, the Lions were driving. They were already up 7-3, and they were looking like they were going to put the Commanders in a 14-3 deficit. And then, of course, the strip sack, which was recovered by Washington, they immediately took that down the field and turned that into a touchdown. You think back to late in the second quarter when the Lions were driving again, once again in scoring range, and Jared Goff throws the interception that is picked off in the end zone. Again, points taken off of the board. The trick play with the wide receiver pass that turned into an interception. Those piled up, and they piled up very quick. And you can't give an offense and a quarterback like Terry McLaurin, pardon me, I saw someone said Terry McLaurin, Jaden Daniels, because he was connecting with Terry McLaurin so much. But nonetheless, you can't give an offense like this multiple opportunities. And like I said, with the issues that the Lions had on defense all season long, especially with the injuries, they themselves on that side of the ball gave up 481 yards to a very good Commanders offense. But I mean, Detroit's going to look back at this game. They did a lot of good things offensively, but again, the turnovers hurt them. They had more than 200 yards rushing, and that's one thing with Dan Campbell since he's become the Lions head coach. He has committed to getting tougher in the trenches, and we see it because Detroit runs the football, okay, and they get after you typically when they're healthy defensively. So you look at the Lions as they're heading into the offseason, and of course, the question is going to be, will they find a way to get over the hump? Because I think the Lions, they still have what it takes to be in postseason contention next year. Clearly, we got to go through free agency, the draft, all of that, jazz to get back to next season. But nonetheless, Detroit definitely has a component. It's to me, I think it's going to come down to who are they going to get to replace Ben Johnson with his phenomenal play calling for this Lions offense? And then what's going to happen? Are they going to lose Aaron Glenn as well? Because it's very difficult when you lose both coordinators. You just think about the Eagles when they went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago and they lost both of their coordinators for last year. Okay. But nonetheless, it's very difficult. But, with success, these are the things that come along with it. So I think Dan Campbell has this team ready for 2025 because Dan Campbell's Mr. Intensity. I know he might frustrate a person or two, with his penchant to go for it on fourth down. He treats it like he's playing Madden in my mind, but nonetheless, uh, he has, he's the embodiment of this team. And I say that because as a head coach, you want to get players that are buying what you're selling. You want to have players who have the same type of mentality that you do. And I think Dan Campbell and his team will be ready. But like I said, let's see who comes in as the offensive coordinator, and let's see the relationship that person is able to build with Jared Goff. Jared Goff had a phenomenal season, but again, he picked the wrong time to have the turnover bug bite them. And at the end of the day, that's also a credit to the Commanders' defense for going out there and making those plays and having the right schemes. But nonetheless, like I always say, there's only one team that's going to be able to say that they won their final game of this tournament. And of course, that's going to be the Super Bowl champs. High hopes for the Lions coming into this season. They lived up to those high hopes for the Lions heading into the postseason and in the postseason. And unfortunately, it did not work out for them that way. 15-3. That's what the Lions are going to look back on this season. And all three of their losses came at home: Tampa Bay, Buffalo, and now Washington. So as the offseason has prematurely begun in the Motor City for the Lions. Let's see how this team is able to respond and get back on track for next season. But, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now, you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I'm signing off. I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.